Our next chapter that we'll be looking at today is Matthew 8. It was in the year 28 AD, near the town of Capernaum in Galilee, right after Jesus gave the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew 8, verse 1 begins. When he had come down from the mountain, great multitudes followed him. And behold, there came a leper and worshipped him, saying, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. And Jesus put forward his hand and touched him, saying, I am willing, be clean. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Jesus said to him, see that you tell no one, but go your way, show yourself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded for a testimony unto them. That's the first miracle that the book of Matthew goes into detail about. So why does he choose this miracle to talk about first? Leprosy was a skin disease that can severely disfigure a person's face in particular. So it's often a very obvious disease, and that would make its healing obvious also. What else is significant about this particular healing? The man who came to Jesus to be healed came and worshipped him. He would not have gotten healed by Jesus if he had not come to him. And then Jesus said he was willing to heal him and commands that he be clean from the leprosy, and it immediately leaves him. And then Jesus told him to go to the priest and follow the law from Leviticus 14 about how to be officially recognized as clean from a skin disease. And then Jesus said that the purpose of that was to be a testimony to them. The fact that Jesus told the man not to tell anybody else about the healing tells me two things. First, that Jesus wasn't doing any of this for fame. And that happened over and over in the Gospels, him telling people not to talk about being healed to others. The other thing that this instance in particular points out is that Jesus did want one person to know about it, to see this testimony, the priest. So why only the priest? Like we talked about last week, Jesus explained that pearls or holy things shouldn't be cast before just anyone, but given to those who will not misuse it. And who would be better to lead the people of Israel in following the Messiah who had now come than Israel's priest? But sadly, Mark 1:45 tells how this man didn't end up obeying Jesus, but published it abroad, resulting in Jesus not being able to enter the city openly anymore because of the crowds who were trying to get to him. So Jesus's plan A did not end up happening. Instead of the priest hearing this testimony and leading Israel in following Jesus, the religious leadership instead became jealous of how the people were immediately following Jesus instead of them. Matthew 27:18 is where we see that their envy of him is what they ended up murdering him because of. I wonder how things might have happened differently if the man had done what Jesus said. We never know in our lives how things might have turned out better if we had just done what God said in the first place. Let's keep reading Matthew 8, verse 5. And when Jesus had entered into Capernaum, there came to him a centurion, and a centurion was a commander of 100 Roman soldiers. He came saying to Jesus in verse 6, "Lord, my servant is laying at home sick and paralyzed, grievously in torment." And Jesus said unto him, "I will come and heal him." The centurion answered and said, "Lord, I am not worthy that you should come under my roof, but say the word only, and my servant will be healed. For I am a man under authority, having soldiers under me. And I say to this man, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes, and to my servant, do this, and he does it." What's the centurion's point? He's saying that Jesus can do that. In verse 3, we read that Jesus touched the man with leprosy, and that's when he was healed. And that's apparently how Jesus' healings had been known to happen, because of what Jesus says next. But this Roman army leader is saying that Jesus can simply command his paralyzed servant to be healed from afar. In some sense, he had an idea that Jesus was a commander like him of some kind of army with the power to command that pain and evil be destroyed. Revelation 19:14 tells us that Jesus is the commander of an army, and he does have the power to destroy the bad things of this world simply by a word. So here's Jesus' response to the man saying that he knows what Jesus has the ability to do. Verse 10, when Jesus heard that, he marveled and said to them that were following, "Truly I say unto you, I have not found so great faith, no, not even in Israel." Jesus' point there is that the Israelites, who are supposed to be God's people, should have greater faith than any other people group. God gave to the nation of Israel his written laws, but this man, one of those who Romans 2 says do not have the physical law, but do have it in their hearts, with their conscience either accusing or excusing them. This man was actually following what the law teaches and what it's meant to lead us into. Like Galatians 3:24 says, the law was our schoolmaster to bring us to Christ, that we might be justified by faith. And faith is taught all throughout the Old Testament, as Hebrews 11 gives a lot of examples of. So this centurion apparently had more faith than anyone who Jesus ever witnessed, even more than anyone from Israel. Because this man said that Jesus could just command that healing would occur, and it would. That sounds like Genesis 1, where all that creation took was God simply commanding it. Jesus continues in verse 11, "And I say unto you that many shall come from the east and west, and shall sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the children of the kingdom shall be cast out into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth." And Jesus said to the centurion, "Go your way, and as you have believed, so be it done unto you." And his servant was healed in that same hour. What does verse 11 mean by people coming from the east and west to sit down? I've never heard that talked about. The coming from east and west is mentioned in Psalm 107, 2 and 3, which says, "Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, whom he has redeemed from the hand of the enemy, and gathered them out of the lands from the east and from the west. Then the sitting down part is explained by Isaiah 25:6, which says, "At this mountain the Lord of hosts will make for all people a feast." And then verse 8 says, "He will swallow up death in victory, and the Lord will wipe away tears from off all faces." And Luke 14:8 mentions sitting down at a wedding feast. But what was that mountain in Isaiah 25:6 that God says he will prepare a feast for all people at right before he wipes away all tears? 23 chapters before that, Isaiah said in Isaiah 2:2, "In the last days, the mountain of the Lord's house will be established above the top of the mountains and exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it." Is that at all literal, or is it only metaphorical? Why would it not be literal? Are all of the saved going to come from east and west to sit down for the feast that God says in these places that he will prepare? If it is a literal coming to sit down at the literal mountain of the Lord's house, then that would make sense why we read from Matthew chapter 5 in verse 35 that Jesus said, "Do not swear by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king." Now, who is the great king whose city is Jerusalem, which people were swearing by? The great king is the King of Kings, who happened to be the one speaking. How could Jesus have been more modest as he always was? And that gives us one example of that. Here in Matthew 8:10, not only is the city of the great king mentioned, but the whole nation that he considered his. In December, we read from Ezekiel 37:22, where God prophesied, "I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be king to them all." And Jesus also didn't object to being titled the King of the Jews, as he's also called in Psalm 47:2, the King over all the earth. And then who are the children of the kingdom of heaven that Jesus says end up outside where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth? Romans 9:7 explains, "Not because they are the seed of Abraham are they all children of God." And Romans 11 says that Jews still have to believe in order to be grafted back in to God's tree as his family members. Now we'll read another healing account, the next verse 14. "And when Jesus had come into Peter's house, he saw his wife's mother laying and sick with a fever. And he touched her hand, and the fever left, and she rose up and ministered to them. When the evening came, they brought unto him many that were possessed with demons, and he cast out the spirits with his word, and he healed all that were sick, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet in Isaiah 53:4, saying, He himself took our infirmities and bore our sicknesses." And that's where we'll stop for today. So this passage includes 3 accounts of Jesus healing individuals, and it says he healed many more also. So what can we learn from these 3 things? Things that we haven't already covered about these 3 healings. Let me start with Peter's mother-in-law. We can see that when Jesus came across a problem, he fixed it. Matthew doesn't even say that Peter had to ask Jesus to heal his mother-in-law of her sickness. He just says Jesus came in and saw her, touched her hand, and she was healed. That makes me think of the prophecy from Isaiah 65 about when God makes the heavens and the earth new. Isaiah 65:24 says, "Before they call, I will answer." And that's how it is with Jesus. He knows our needs and will meet them. Before Peter's mother-in-law, the centurion made the effort to get to Jesus in verse 5, but he technically did not ask before Jesus said, "I will come and heal him." Jesus simply was told what the situation was, that the servant was sick, paralyzed, and tormented, and right away Jesus said, "I will come and heal him." But Jesus' coming wasn't necessary, since the centurion had enough faith for more than that, for it to be you could say, a wireless transaction. So Jesus said in verse 13, "As you have believed, so be it." And before that man, the man with leprosy who came to Jesus in verse 2, he also did not technically ask Jesus to heal him. He simply stated that he knew that Jesus had the ability to heal him if he wanted to. And Jesus said, "I am willing," and healed him. What questions might we still have in our minds about any of this? Isn't God willing to heal everybody? Sure, he would like to. But contrary to popular belief, God's will doesn't always happen. Sin certainly is never what he wants to happen. And God's also not willing that any should perish, 2 Peter 3:9 says. And yet, Matthew 7:13 still says that most do take the way to destruction. Like I've said before, God lets people's will happen. That's often called free will. He also gave freedom to the angels, and 1/3 of them made their choice to go against his wishes. And they're the ones who tempt people to go against God with them. And if we are not healed from something, that could be one way that the fallen angels would like us to be tempted to turn against God, like the book of Job is about. But if we know the truth, we won't give in to that temptation. The truth will set us free, John 8:32. So what's maybe one more truth that we can get from today's message about these 3 healings? What is God willing to do? And a second question, what will he do in the present? He will do what is best. And again, he is willing to heal anybody and everybody who will come to him. Now, healing is not required for salvation, but it is one of the results of salvation, at least in eternity. Healing is certainly within Jesus' ability to make happen before eternity. So, as far as what he will do, we can ask more specifically, in what cases are prayers for healing going to be answered affirmatively? And in what cases are prayers for healing not going to be answered? Here's my short answer. don't ask for anything selfishly. Does that mean that every non-selfish prayer for healing is going to be answered affirmatively? We talked about that recently when we covered the verse, ask and you will receive, and in understanding that in context, referring to what is objectively good and best, along with James 4:3, which says, you ask and do not receive because you ask amiss or wrongly to consume it upon lusts or wrong desires. And just one more scripture, 1 John 5:14, puts this so clearly. This is the confidence that we have in him, in the Son of God, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And the alternative to that, if a prayer is not according to his will, then that prayer would not be answered. I hope that clears up any possible misunderstandings about which prayers will be answered. But it's important to remember that salvations are God's priority, even above just healing. But he certainly wants only good things for us, like for us to be healed physically, even now, if that's what would be best. And like we looked at from the Sermon on the Mount, he tells us to ask for the good things that he talks about, and promises that as a result we will receive them if they are the truly good and best to happen, which would be a synonym for asking what is according to his will, because he knows a lot more of the details about every situation better than we do. So since Jesus wants what is good for us, he's willing to heal us. Don't be afraid to ask what his will is. And finally, similar to these healings, in eternity, we won't even have to ask before God answers. Will you pray with me? God, help all of our prayers to be according to your will. Help every word that we say be truthful and without any selfishness. Help us to look for your will and find it, and to ask for what we should ask for, and know that we will receive it when we have asked for what we should. And help us to have the faith of that centurion, knowing that you can do anything. And we know that you will do what's best, as you always do. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. I have a song now. All things work for our good, though sometimes we can't see how they could. Struggles that break our hearts in two, sometimes blind us to the truth. Our Father knows what's best for us. His ways are not So when you don't understand, when you don't see his plan, when you can't trace his hand, trust his heart. He sees the master plan. He holds the future in his hand. Don't live as those who have no hope. All our hope is found in him. We see the present clearly. He sees the first and last, and like a tapestry, he's weaving you and me to someday be just like him. God is too wise to be mistaken. God is too good to be unkind. So when you don't understand, when you don't see his plan, when you can't trace his hand, trust his heart. God is too wise to be mistaken. God is too good to be unkind. So when you don't understand, when you don't see his plan, when you can't trace his hand, trust his heart.